to Laurel Smith of Chicago, Illinois, nonprofit home video and artworks creations. In this particular video, we will be looking at new archaeological, theological, and astronomical discoveries of Laurel Smith of Chicago, Illinois, nonprofit home video and artworks creations, as they uncovered the architectural origin of the octagonal building structure in Jerusalem called the Dome of the Rock. As it turns out that we see images of this octagonal building structure that has a golden dome, outer wall, stone rectangular window frame area as Stealth Pyramid E images, in which actually confirms the Stealth Pyramid base that surrounds a stone cross-shaped building structure in Lalibela. As we look at the Giza Sphinx being denied in theological racism by the European Gentile nations that started the early United States government in black hats, coats, tights, and shoes. This would be the early 13 colonies that arrived in English trading ships to form the early 13 colonies of the infancy of the United States government. As the English pilgrims took over the United front in Giza and Gaza, we are looking at the English settlements, and these English settlements were nothing but English pilgrims as they established their 15th century and 16th century settlements around Judea and Jerusalem. It was not until the ending of the 16th century that the decision to place the African pyramids on the back of the dollar bill in America, but not the black man face upon the lion's body. This was tantamount to theological, governmental-based racism of the early United States. As the English pilgrims in black hats, coats, tights, and shoes, English settlements started to encroaching in the Middle East upon the biblical Holy Land areas of Judea and Jerusalem. So this will be found in the 400-year-old mistranslated King James Bible, book of Ezra, 1st chapter, 3rd verse, which states, "Let us go up to Jerusalem, which is located in the land of Judah, and build the house of the Lord God of Jacob." So as the book of Joshua, 15th chapter, 20th through the 47th verse, states the land of Judah to be Giza, Gaza, Palestine, Ethiopia, Escalon, Gath, Gaza, and the Jerusalem. Well, when we look at the globe Earth map, we must look at what the Dome of the Rock octagonal building structure, outer wall, stone rectangular window frame, Stealth Pyramid E is telling us. For instance, the African continent appears in the lower section of the Dome of the Rock, Stealth Pyramid E. Now this is where we make one of the greatest archaeological, theological, and astronomical discoveries of our time. As the ancient Babylonian Stealth Pyramid civilizations of Ham, in which pyramids we're now seeing in the Dome of the Rock, outer wall, stone rectangular window frame, as in Stealth Pyramid E. They measured huge square sections of the globe Earth or land surface. This is why we're looking at a stealth pyramid connected to the book of Psalms, 105th chapter, 23rd verse. Original 12 African continent tribes. Now remember, the African Sphinx of Judea and Jerusalem, of Genesis 49 chapter 8 verse, the couching Ethiopian lion Sphinx of the tribe of Judah, he ruled from South Africa to north, over the normal-headed African Adamic race that was created in Genesis 2:7. They actually populated Africa from south to north. But if we draw 12 horizontal white lines from south to north across the African continent and view them with satellite imagery, we will see nothing but African tribes living in each of the 12 geographic land surface lines. And which brings us back into the terminology in which I call the original 12 African continent tribes, in which the Giza Sphinx line of ancient Judea and Jerusalem ruled over. Now this is, of course, before the 1611 King James of England appointed 400 years ago 72 Greek and Hebrew scholars to fly to the geographic 11 and 12 Northeast African continent land surface line to study the Giza Sphinx line of Judea and Jerusalem Islamic Aramaic Dead Sea Scrolls that was found in the Qumran cave. After the 72 Greek and Hebrew scholars illegally changed the 12 African continent tribes into the 12 sons of Jacob, as we read in the book of Psalms 105th chapter 23rd verse, it totally disconnected the Afro-Americans reading the mistranslated 400-year-old King James Bible. It disconnected them from their African roots. And it denied the original Giza Sphinx line, or the black man's face upon the lion's body, which we now see in front of the Isaiah 1919 Giza pyramids. Now this is why when the same European Gentile nations that started the early United States government in black hats, coats, tights, and shoes, they made a racist or theologically racist-based decision to place the pyramids on the back of the dollar bill, but not the black man's face upon the lion's body. This is where we rediscover the English settlers casting tents around Judea and Jerusalem in the early 15th and 16th century, which led to the shipping away of the black-skinned Islamic Aramaic Dead Sea Scrolls speaking Ethiopian descendants of the Sphinx. So we're talking about a 15th and 16th century now migration of the early United States 13 colonies started by the English Pilgrims. So it was the English Pilgrims in black hats, coats, tights, and shoes that established early settlements, okay, around Judea and Jerusalem. And this is why today, if you go to the Western Wall, you will see European-faced Israelites illegally occupying the book of Ezra, 1st chapter and 3rd verse, Jerusalem and Judea, land surface area of the black African couching Ethiopian line things of ancient Judaism. So having said all that, we would return back to the Dome of the Rock octagonal building structure, and it sits within a rectangular enclosure area. So this is where we make another archaeological and theological based discovery, as we soon discover that the Ethiopian stone cross-shaped building structure in Lalibela is actually representing the step pyramid E around its base area. So when we compare the Dome of the Rock stone rectangular window frame or outer wall, the octagonal building structure has stone rectangular window frame that we refer to as the Dome of the Rock. Now in each stone rectangular window frame there's 3 levels. We have the first level of rectangular window frames where we see stone X's. Okay. Now there's 3 levels. The 3rd level is surrounding the foundation that supports the golden dome atop the octagonal building structure roof. That's where the step pyramid E windows are. Okay, which resembles the step pyramid that surrounds the base of the stone cross-shaped building structure in Lalibela in Ethiopia. But as we look at this first window, stone rectangular window frame upon the octagonal building structure called the Dome of the Rock, we will see that there's 4 entrances, right, to each of the to the octagonal building structure, outer wall surface area. So we will look at the first entrance into the octagonal building structure called the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. Now this entrance has a stone rectangular window frame next to it. And guess what? We will see, like if you take a blank sheet of paper and draw one white X, then draw another white X underneath that. That's the stone image that appears in the window, the stone rectangular window frame, that's adjacent to the entrance in the to the Dome of the Rock. You say, well, why is these dual X's in stone a part of the entrance window features? Well, you see, once you take these two X's, now you can do this with a pen or a pencil, but you draw it on a blank sheet of paper, one X above another X. Now, the way we will discover that these X's are pointing to the Giza Sphinx lion of ancient Judaism, stone cross-shaped building structure in Lalibela. That's what these dual stone X's are representing. So as Afro-Americans make a tour trip to Jerusalem, they will begin to notice these dual stone X's within a stone rectangular window frame, adjacent to the entrance. So finally you have something to tell your Sunday school churchgoers that the Laurel Smith of Chicago, Illinois, on the Nibiru Temple aliens has decoded the dual stone X's to the Dome of the Rock entrance. Within the stone rectangular window frame adjacent to the Dome of the Rock entrance. You say, okay, so how do we go about decoding it on a blank sheet of paper? Two stone X's, one above the other. Well, the first thing you do is you draw a line from the corners of each X down to the corner of the adjacent X's. Okay. Then you will notice you have just generated a stone Ethiopian cross-shaped building structure. This is where we make one of the greatest archaeological, theological, and astronomical discoveries of our time. Now, as we discover, this is a black man's building structure in which the European Gentile nations, if we go back 400 years ago, we see the 1611 King James of England appointing 72 Greek and Hebrew scholars to fly to Judea and Jerusalem. That's the Giza Sphinx, the black man's face upon the lion's body, in which was enacted theological racism within the mistranslated King James Bible. So this Giza Sphinx, spoke to Islamic Aramaic Dead Sea Scrolls, along with the Ethiopians in Judea and Jerusalem. They was in black. They had white robes and white turbans. Just like if you go to Ethiopia today, you'll see the black women in long kuta kente robes, and they head wrapped around with kuta kente cloth. Now all you need to do is to snap your fingers like a magician and turn the kuta kente robe white and turn the kuta kente head cloth white. Then you will see the original black Arabians of Ethiopia, Giza Sphinx, lion of ancient Judaism. So this is why when we go back to the Lamentation 5th chapter 10th verse and Jeremiah 14:2, it speaks of black-skinned people in Jerusalem and Judea, or the women being raped by the Greeks and Romans, okay, and the Philistines. Our skin was black like an oven. That's the scriptural statement in the book of Lamentation, 5th chapter 10th verse. And they raped the women of Zion in the midst of the city of Judah. So this explains why we have Palestinians today. Because if you cross from Giza, the black man face upon a lion's body, in northeast Africa, right? You cross the desert from Giza. Now, if you want to go to Jerusalem, you got to cross the Gaza Strip. So you cross it from Giza, Giza, the lion sphinx of ancient Judaism area, and that's the 11th line and the east and west geographic northeast African continent, 11th line of Judea. But although it was denied in the King James Bible, theological racism. But when you cross over from the Giza Sphinx area, you crossing the desert, facing towards the Red Sea. Now, in order to get to Jerusalem, you got to cross the Gaza Strip. The Gaza Strip is sort of like a California beach coastline. That's, in reality, when you turn your news media on and news television stations, they talk about war in the Middle East. They're talking about that 12th line upon the Northeast African continent. Like, for instance, if you draw 12 lines across South Africa, right? So we're talking about east to west lines, or horizontal lines, from South Africa to north. The 12th line is falling off the African continent, Northeast African continent, into the water. So that means that Jerusalem area, okay, is the white V. Now, you're going to see a huge red square on my video, right? And then you're going to see a Sphinx 11 face, which encompasses Sudan, Libya, Giza, and Judea. But the Bible don't tell you about Judea, or the English Bible. If you open up the dictionary and stuff, they might mention Judea, but they won't tell you that it's connected to a black man's face upon a lion's body, in which was transported above the atmospheric regions of planet Earth. And Ezekiel's Old Testament glowing will in the world like your foes. So this was, if we look at Jerusalem as the 12th line in Ezra 1st chapter 3rd verse in Northeast Africa, then Judea is the 11th line. So 11 and 12 is connected by numeric proximity. Now the same thing occurs if you try to cross over from Giza, right, the Giza Sphinx line of ancient Judaism, the Egyptian pyramids. If you cross from Giza, you got to cross Gaza, Gaza, the Gaza Strip. Remember, it looks like a California coastline, right? A California beach coastline. That's why they call it the Gaza Strip, okay? So the Europeans did the same thing that started early United States government, okay? In the 15th century, 13 colonies of the early United States government was formed by English pilgrims in black hats, coats, tights, and shoes as they got off the English trading ships. So this is the same settlements that placed the pyramids of the English pilgrims as English pilgrims placed the African lion things, Isaiah 19:19 Giza pyramid, on the back of the dollar bill, but not the black man face upon the lion's body. This was pure theological racism. So as the same English pilgrim settlements, right, was erected around Judea and Jerusalem, they actually took part in what I call the 1609 translate slave trade. This is why when we look at the creation of the 400-year-old mistranslated English Bible, we're looking at the European Gentile nations that started the early United States government story about the black man face upon a lion's body, in which we now see in front of the Giza pyramids. This would be the lion sphinx of ancient Judaism. So, as he ruled over the 12 African continent tribes from South Africa to north. And who are they? They are the normal shape-headed black man that was created in Genesis 2:7. So this is why ancient Judaism had the black African couch and Ethiopian lion sphinx that was transported above the atmospheric region of planet Earth, and Ezekiel's glowing circular Old Testament will in the world like your foes. Now this is why ancient Judaism was so important to the 12 African continent tribes. This is, of course, before the United States took over Jerusalem and Judea as English pilgrims. Remember, the same dress code in which we see English pilgrims in black hats, coats, tights, and shoes starting in the early 13 colonies and making a theologically racist-based decision and political decision to place the Giza pyramids on the back of the American dollar bill, but not the black man's face upon the lion's body, in which we now see couched down in front of the Isaiah 1919 Giza pyramids. So this is where we discovered that the same English pilgrim settlements, right, they were settlers. They established in the 15th and 16th century, like chuck wagon tents and stuff around Judea and Jerusalem. And the area in which the today we call them European-faced false Israelites in black hats, coats, tights, and shoes, as they're seen praying at the Giza Sphinx lying of ancient Judea and Jerusalem western wall. But now let's go back to this globe map image of the Step Pyramid E, which confirms that the same step pyramid that surrounds the stone cross-shaped building structure in Alibaba is the architectural origin of the Dome of the Rock building structure itself. Now, in order to see this, we go back to the dual stone X's within the stone rectangular window frame upon the Temple Mount octagonal building structure outer wall or window surface area. So these dual X's is generating a stone Ethiopian cross. Now I'm showing you this cross in red, and I have arrows pointing up from the octagonal building structure outer wall, where you see the arrow pointing from the outer wall dual stone X's to the illustration in which I show that the dual stone X's within the stone rectangular window frame upon the octagonal building structure outer wall in Jerusalem is a representation of the Holy African Giza Sphinx building. Now remember, if you're looking at the European story of what transpired in ancient Africa, then you can open up the English Bible, the 66-book Bible, right? But if you want to look at the African Sphinx story of what occurred in ancient Africa as he ruled the 12 African continent tribes from South Africa to North Africa, okay, as the lion thinks of ancient Judaism. Okay, this is before the 1611 King James appointed 72 Greek and Hebrew scholars to fly to Judea and Jerusalem and study Islamic Aramaic Dead Sea Scrolls found in the Qumran cave. So these 72 Greek and Hebrew scholars illegally changed the 12 African continent tribes within the mistranslated King James Bible into the 12 sons of Jacob. This totally concealed the African Sphinx connection to Jerusalem, and any Afro-American reading the book of Psalms, 105th chapter, 23rd verse, they would read the European Gentile nations that took over Northeast Africa, Holy Land area of Judea and Jerusalem. Now, the European would lie in the Bible as to the 12 African continent tribes, true origin with the Giza Sphinx ruling over them. So as the illegal name change was placed within the Bible, we see it in the book of Psalms, 105th chapter, 23rd verse, where it no longer speaks of the 12 African continent tribes that populated South Africa to north, in which the black African Sphinx ruled over. The book of Psalms, 105th chapter, 23rd verse, now speaks of 12 sons of Jacob entering into ancient Egypt and started ancient Judaism from somewhere else outside of Northeast Africa. But that's somewhere else in which the European Gentile nations try to use to discredit the Giza Sphinx ruling over from South Africa to north. That somewhere else turns out to backfire in the European Gentile nations' narrative, English textbook. You say, well, how did the somewhere else, that somewhere else called Babylon? It's called Babylon in the book of Psalms, 105th chapter, 23rd verse. In other words, when we go to Iraq, that's where Babylon is in the Old Testament. We see step pyramids all around Iraq, which is Babylon. So when we see the same step pyramids surrounding the stone Ethiopian cross-shaped building structure in Lalibela base. That's a cross-shaped building structure 11. We see it as the origin of the Islamic Aramaic Dead Sea Scrolls speaking 12 African continent tribes. Now remember, when the Bible talks about the world, the whole earth had one language, okay? Before the flood of Noah, they're talking about the Islamic Aramaic Dead Sea Scrolls speaking language. Now, why would the normal-headed black man, now remember, we talking about out of the two human beings created in the book of Genesis, we see an elongated-headed African Adam, which no longer exists upon the surface of planet Earth. Like if we go back in time, we would see King Tut, Pharaoh Akhenaten, Queen Nefertiti. They all had elongated shaped heads. Okay, these are the sons of God, or alien God. This is the H2925 alien that was in Ezekiel's glowing Old Testament, willing the world like your foes. And they too have long watermelon-shaped heads. But anyway, when we go back to the normal-headed African Adam, this is the second black man spoken of in the Bible, mistranslated King James Bible. So this is Genesis 2:7. So who populated South Africa to north was the normal shape-headed black African Adamic race. You get it now? And that's who the Sphinx ruled over in ancient Judaism. So as we go back to the Stealth Pyramid E image that appears in the Dome of the Rock, octagonal building structure, outer wall, stone, rectangular window frame, we will be shocked to see that in my video, you're going to see that the Sphinx 11 appears in the Stealth Pyramid E image. So when Afro-Americans look at my video and say, wait a minute, that's the black Sphinx of the Bible, and in which we can see when we look at Northeast Africa with satellite imagery. Now this is way before, this is the 11th line. Remember, the first line is in South Africa, the tip of South Africa. Then you go up 2, 3, 4. By the time you get to the 9th line, you're in Nigeria. You get it now? And then you go to the 10th line, now you in Ethiopia and Libya. Okay? Now you go to the 11th Northeast African continent, horizontal geographic land surface line. Now you're in ancient Egypt. That's Judah. For you slow Bible thumpers. As we now see that the Google map image, the blue basketball-shaped earth, has an image of the African continent, its center, where when we look at this located the Babylonian Stealth Pyramid civilization of Ham, located in modern Iraq, where Babylon. So in the Old Testament, the Pyramid E image that appears in the Dome of the Rock surrounding the foundation that's supposed to go to the dome, on top of the architectural roof called the Dome of the Rock. When we look at the hubris of the earth was employed in the globe earth Stealth Pyramid E Mercator projection. In this sense, not a European content, false man-based Lord God, but we see the African Sphinx 11. Now this Sphinx 11 face appears in the study. Now when we back to the African continent, it's the chief feature of the Dome of the Rock, which reinforces my statement in which I made earlier, states that the Dome of the Rock is a 100 Sphinx line ancient Ethiopia building structure. Now as we go back to the dual stone X's within the lower half of the octagonal building structure, outer wall surface area, next to an entrance. Now if you, on the blank sheet, one X above the other X on the white blank sheet of paper, if you have a pointing vertical line from each corners of the X that they intersect with the bottom, if you look at it, you get Ethiopian cross called dual stone X images within the stone rectangle frame. Since we have destroyed the Egyptian temple, my views, any occasion in their Presbyterian churches, we're looking at the destruction, the literary destruction. The 400 translated King James Bible follows European-based Lord textbook. As we now see that the Sphinx of Genesis 49 chapter 8 verse, the black on the lion's body, and we now see in front of Isaiah 19:19, this Sphinx years ago was theologically denied with King James Bible. It theological racism. Now, as we look at the 12 African continent tribes, which the Africans were over, this is way before the 1611, appointed 72 Greek and Hebrew scholars fly to travel to Judea to study the Islamic Aramaic Dead Sea Scrolls. That's the Islamic language of the Africans and ancient Egypt. Now, as we see that the Africans basically renamed, this will be read in the book of Psalms, 107th verse. So the European Gentile nations wrongfully credited the 12 Jacob into ancient Egypt from the Babylonian pyramid civilization, image of Ham. Now, as we go, did not start ancient Judea in the 12th century. But a second illegal name change changed the 12 sons of Jacob within the King James into the 12 tribes. Why Afro-Americans in the churches trying to find the African continent roots find it hard to associate the African continent, the on the lion's body, dome of the rock building in Jerusalem. However, by looking at the dual stone X, one above the other in the stone rectangular window frame of the octagon, as this stone rectangular window frame generates the architectural image of the stone cross-shaped building structure of the Bible, as the step image within the dome of the rock foundation supports the golden dome. We see the same step pyramid E image surrounds the cross-shaped building structure in the Lalibala base area. So look at the denial of the European Gentile nations. Started the early United States, 13 colonies in the infancy of the early United States. As class coat, shoes, and tights, this is the pilgrim dress code. As they, in Judea and Jerusalem in the 16th century, we see them as black hat, coat, tights, and shoes, European face false Israelites that illegally occupied Ezra 1:3 land of Judah and Jerusalem. Now, in the globe, I'm looking at the African continent within the step pyramid E image, where Babylonians use huge square sections to measure. So if we go to the globe map, we're going to see proximity. So if we draw 12 lines from across the east to west horizontal line, a beautiful satellite, the African tribes living in each of the 12 land surface lines, and which brings us into the terminology which I call the original 12 African continent tribes, in which Jesus thinks ruled over before they was illegally renamed into the book of Psalms, 105th chapter, 23rd verse. Now, as we look at the globe map area, Jerusalem is located in Judah, according to the book of Ezra 1:3. Let us go up to Jerusalem, which is located in the land of Judah, and build the house of the Lord God. This is the H225 African continent alien 2, which is appearing in Area 51, a secret underground military installation. But the African continent 1 to 4 line, South Africa to the north, or the 12th house off the East African continent to get the V-shaped piece of land. You see, that's blind, and it's attached to the things you left Egyptian headdress. So 11 and 12 is connected by the proximity on the numeric chart. So Judea and Jerusalem, you see the St. 11th face under Jerusalem map. Today, Bible map, you're going to see Israel face in the name what the black face up on the lion's body called the lion face of Judah should be. So Judah should be under. You see the prime minister. He's a white face prime minister of Israel. This statement in which says that the United States took over Judea and Jerusalem in black dress code of the early days. The pyramids on the back of the dollar bill in the 15th and 16th century, but not the black man face upon the lion's body. This is tantamount to theological governmental, in which led up to the 16 on that translation.